Good day and welcome back to our study of the book of Mark. Today we're starting chapter 12, the first 13 verses. And if you recall from our previous discussions, this is the last week of Jesus' life. This is the Passion Week, and this was his second visit to the temple in Jerusalem. The first visit he was there, he overturned the money-changing tables. He confronted the Pharisees, and he also cursed the fig tree. And on the way back into Jerusalem on this occasion, the fig tree was withered, a symbol of how the status of Judah would also be withered. And on this occasion, the Pharisees and the scribes confronted Jesus and asked him, by what authority did he do this? Did he do what he had done the previous day, or did he confront and upset the temple rituals? And of course, he did not really answer their question, but he asked them a question in return, and he said, by what authority did John the Baptist do what he did? Was it from heaven or was it from man? And when the scribes and Pharisees refused to answer, Jesus also refused to answer their question, under what authority he did what he did. Now we get into chapter 12, and the scribes and Pharisees are there, so Jesus is going to give them a parable. And this is a parable which is a little different from most parables, because most parables are not that easy to understand unless you have some insight into what he's saying. But this parable is quite straightforward. And it is a parable of judgment. If you look at Matthew, there are two other parables given at the same time, but right now, this is the one parable given in Mark. And it says, Jesus began to speak to them in parables. A man planted a vineyard and set a hedge around it, dug a place for the vine vat, and built a tower. And he leased it to vine dressers and went into a far country. Now as time went on, he sent a servant to the vine dressers that he might receive some of the fruit of the vineyard. They took the servant and beat him and sent him away empty-handed. Jesus sent another servant, and they wounded him in the head and sent him away shamefully. And he sent a third servant whom they killed. And then they said, then the vine master, the owner of the vineyard, said, they will respect my son. But the whom he sent to these vine dressers, and the vine dressers killed the son. This is their heir, they said. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they took him and killed him and cast him out of the vineyard. Therefore, what will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the vine dressers and give the vineyard to others. Then he quotes a scripture from the Old Testament. It says, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Now, if you go back to Psalm 118, this is verses 22 to 23. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. So what's the purpose of this parable? Well, this is also based upon a parable in Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 5. And it says, let me sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved regarding his vineyard. My well-beloved has a vineyard and a very fruitful hill. He dug it up and cleared out its stones and planted it with the choicest vine. He built a tower in its midst and made a winepress in it. He expected it to bring forth good grapes, but it brought forth wild grapes, which are tasteless and bitter and of no use. Why then, when I expected it to bring forth good grapes, did it bring forth wild grapes? let me tell you what I will do to my vineyard. And he goes on to say, back down in verse 16, down in verse 10, for 10 acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bath, and a homer of seed shall yield 1 ephah. The vineyard of the Lord, it says back in verse 7, is the house of Israel. The men of Judah are his pleasant plant. He looked for justice, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry for help. This is a parable talking about a vineyard, a vineyard owner planting a vineyard and expecting results from it. But the people who were tending the vineyard did not give him the results that he wanted. When he sent servants, they beat them or killed them. He sent his son, whom they also killed, saying that they would inherit then as a result. This is always a very clear parable, because the owner of the vineyard really was God, and the vineyard is Israel. And the owners, the vine keepers, the ones who were tending the vineyard, the vine growers, are the Pharisees, the scribes, the leaders of Israel. And they have killed the prophets, they have killed the previous people that God sent to warn them. People like John the Baptist. People that God sent to warn them about what would happen and what was happening in the land that they are to tend. And at the very start, they were not too sure what this really meant, but as time went on, Jesus, as he told this parable, it became clear to the scribes and the Pharisees, for this is to whom this is being given. He began to speak to them, the scribes and the Pharisees, in parables. It became obvious to them what Jesus was saying. And when this happened, then they came to this part of Psalm 118 where it says, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Jesus said, the vine grower sent his son, God sent his son, whom these people were going to kill. The parable said that the people, the vine growers, killed his son. And then he turns around and tells them that the stone, the person, the idea, which the vine growers rejected, the scribes and Pharisees rejected, became the chief cornerstone. And this was the Lord's doing. This is not a difficult phrase to understand, a difficult passage to understand, and the scribes and the Pharisees knew it very well. They were very clear in their minds to whom Jesus was speaking and about what he was speaking, and they did not like it. And instead of repenting, instead of showing Jesus that they understood and were repentant of what they had done, they wanted to lay hands on him, but they feared the multitude. They wanted to kill him even more then than they had before. The parable is of God sending his son after sending the prophets and the scribes beforehand to give them warnings, to try to tell them what they had been doing wrong in the land of Israel. Jesus said God sent his son, and they still treated him badly and were planning to kill him, which is what Jesus himself said. This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. As if they would overcome God's will and take over true control for themselves. And it said, they sought to lay hands on him, but they feared the multitude, for they knew he had spoken the parable about them. So they left him and went away. Matthew says he came after the scribes and Pharisees in a way, more verbally. And he said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay tithe of mint and ants and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of extortion and self-indulgence." This is a parable aimed at, designed for, and spoken to the scribes and Pharisees, outlining what they had done wrong, how they had become corrupted, and how the temple as a result had become corrupted. And they knew very well to whom Jesus was speaking this parable. They wanted to lay hands on him, they wanted to kill him more even then than before, but because they were afraid of the crowds, they left him for the time and went away. We're going to get on further into this next chapter next week as we continue this study in the Gospel of Mark. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.